Hello, everybody. Just wanted to take an opportunity to do a little bit of a guerrilla video here. This is not anything like what we do normally. This is filmed kind of off the cuff and is an in process deal. But you guys are very interested in seeing how I go through the design process, so here you go.
Hey guys, well, I told you I would kind of let you in on how the design process works for me. And so here's the scenario. This is how it works for a lot of blacksmiths. When you go meet a client, a lot of times they don't know what you do. They may have seen a piece. It may still be a cold meeting. Most people don't know that blacksmith still exists, much less what the state of the craft is and what the capabilities are. So it's one of those situations where you have to be you really have to educate your client, and you have to make sure that you engineer yourself in some room for creative, what's the term I'm looking for? Variety. Here's what I mean. So I may have the opportunity to do 10 or more fire screens or fire set decorations. So starting out, you want something to tie them all together. They're not each individually going to be masterpieces on their own. It's going to be as you know what they call in the art world, a study in such things. So since this is a kind of a plantation setup, I decided to make this try to incorporate themes of flora and fauna, which is a common deal for blacksmiths back in the day. That gives me a palette. Basically, it gives me a way to do a lot of different things that still are tied together in a similar fashion. So now any particular design, and I want to do a sample piece, and any particular design always starts with a drawing. And now this is where the nuance comes in, because I suck at drawing. It's one of the things that I really hate most about myself is I am really not good at drawing at all. And if you're going to be a really good blacksmith, you really need to be good at drawing. So I have to incorporate several handicaps to get to the drawings that I need. For example, this first fireplace screen is going to be centered around a heron in flight, a blue heron, which is something we have down here. So what I want to do is I want to make a heron out of sheet metal. Now, I don't want it to be abstract. I want it to look good. I want it to look professional. I want it to be, an accurate representation of a real life bird. So normally what happens is I go and I find a photograph, or I take a photograph of what I'm after, and I need to convert that into a line drawing in order to be able to transform that into the 3D world, into the 2D world. Now, what has been my savior has been a very, very old school projector. Now, this guy here is probably from the 1950s or 1960s. This belonged to my Aunt Kathy Luttrell, and she used this to paint signs. And so pretty much, simply, you take this is a photograph I absolutely stole, turned it into a black and white line art. So we pop this bad boy in here, and some very, very bright lights come on like this, and you can see that it throws a projection up here to my board. And at the board, I can now take my pencil and trace out. So what ends up happening is I end up with a well-proportioned line drawing. Now, if you'll notice, I have three parts here. I have two wings and a body, and I drew it like this because I want that to be mirrored in the steel. So I'll actually have three different pieces of steel that will be puffed and raised and done in type of almost like a repoussé, hollowed steel, hollow form. So this gives me a place to start. And from there, building a square frame, doing tenon joints and decorating those pieces are easy. That centerpiece is going to be the tough spot. So now that I've got my line drawing, can you see that? It's very light, very, very light. Yeah, you can see a little bit of it. What I'll do now is I'll actually use my scissors and I will cut this guy out. And I will use this as a pattern, not only in the outside shape of the heron that I want, the pieces that I want, but I'll use the lines on the inside as a guide for where I'm going to make chisel cuts and do a lot of my puff and decoration. So now I'll take this guy out there to the forge, cut it up, and put it on some sheet metal. All right, we're out in the shop, and I've got a piece of 18 gauge that I have cleaned up a little bit with some steel wool, and I have hit it with some adhesive. I'm going to let that dry, and what's going to happen is now that I've cut out my Heron, and I hate with this lighter paper. It's all I had. You see, it has a tendency to curl up. We're basically going to glue our paper pattern down to our sheet metal, and then start cutting it out from there.
So as you can see here, what we have the piece that's been cut out. And if you'll notice that every line has been traced over with the chisel, this kind of gives me some guidelines to go through. Now, let me be upfront in saying that it's been a long time since I've done one of these, and I am by far not the best. I would consider myself a beginner. So there are guys out there that have been doing the repoussé work for years that just put this to shame. But this is where we're starting. So what's happening here is because I don't have any pitch or repoussé material to put this into, I'm having to raise all of this on some various stakes that I have around the shop. So it's going to be rough at best, and especially at this size, when you do pieces, the bigger kind of is the better because you have an ability to get in and do a lot more detail without having a lot of super specialized tools, which is what I really need here. Now, our second photo, you can see that there's been considerable raising done over the stakes. All the paper has been burned off, and that's kind of pre-flight situation. And then finally, you look at here, you can see that everything has been cooked off. It's been wire brushed and polished up and pretty. So that's where we're at. Now, there are no feet on this guy. Normally, there's some feet hanging out the back end, and I'm most likely going to end up forging those feet just to give it a little bit of an extra dimension. Again, this is a sample piece. This is just something just stretching the wings, so to speak, and we'll end up seeing where it goes. I'm really debating going ahead and getting some proper pitch, but like I said, time is a factor here. So there you go, guys. I'll keep you posted on everything as we go.